Hey, it's Molly. Thanks for watching Make Me Smart on YouTube. And hey, do us a favor if you like what you're seeing, hit that subscribe button. You'll stay up to date on the latest episodes and you'll know when it's time to have a drink with us on that Friday live stream. It's gonna come.
Yesterday, you and I tried not talking. Oh, there it is.
Have a little faith. Hello, everyone. It's Molly Wood. Welcome back to Make Me Smart. It is Tuesday, our deep dive day into a single topic. I am, as always, joined by one deep sigh, Kai Rizdal. And and today,
Look, I'm in a better mood than I was yesterday, man. That's all I need.
Oh, hallelujah. Good. I was worried about you, bud. I was going to messenger you a beer, but it was only Monday, and I knew you couldn't have
Monday.
one.
I can't do that. That's right.
Today on the show, I'm actually excited about this because, like, I need to know the answer to the question that we are asking today, which is, what is the deal with the complete divorce of between the stock market and the actual economy?
Because it's bananas, right? There are 28 million people getting some form of government unemployment insurance, and yet the S&P 500 is at record highs. Apple is worth $2 trillion, and yet Apple stores are closed. What is going on? What's going on?
Yeah. That is our central question for today. Making us smart, we hope, is Matt Phillips. He is a markets reporter at the New York Times. Matt, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So what the hell, man?
Yeah, you heard,
so that's
you heard our setup there. We pretty
weekend?
much only have the one. There might be some nuances here, but basically, what the what?
Yeah, well, I wrote a story about this about a week ago, and the lead quote was like an analyst saying, "This is nuts." So,
okay, so it's not just
you're not alone in feeling this way. There's a bunch of different things going on. I mean, one thing I think is just important to keep in mind is that we, despite the stock market looming large in the American kind of capitalistic economic psyche or whatever, it's very different than the economy. It doesn't have a lot to do with the economy, and increasingly as these companies that are in the stock market are less and less like the rest of the companies in the economy, it kind of makes sense that the stock market shouldn't really resemble the economy in some ways. So it's a little bit like what I've been taking. I've tried to do it like a sports metaphor a little bit, like the stock market is like the major leagues of American businesses. So, or like the NBA. So like you wouldn't expect Americans to be as good at shooting free throws as the guys in the NBA. I think it's a little bit like that. Like it's not, the guys in the NBA are not representative of my ability to jump or rebound or shoot.
or mine for that instance. All right, so let's keep going with that, right? Let's keep going with that. So what we have here are basically like 5 or 6 big, and they're technology companies, right, that are driving things now. You got the Amazon, you got the Apple. That was my dog shaking her collar, if you heard that. Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google probably, and like 1 or 2 more. And they are driving
Microsoft,
most of this train, right? That is the disconnect.
Right. I mean, that's a huge part of it. So without those 5 or so companies, like the stock market would still be negative for the year. And the median stock, like the typical stock in the S&P 500, say, is still negative for the year. But because these companies are so massive, they exert like a gravitational pull on indexes that are weighted by market size. This gets a little bit technical, but like there's no such thing as
go
the
ahead,
stock
go there,
market,
because it matters.
right? Yeah, like there's no such thing as just like the stock market. There's all these different measures of the stock market. You have a lot of people kind of think about the Dow, right? Like that's one measure of the stock market. Most professionals kind of scoff at the Dow because it's only 30 stocks, and they would look at the S&P 500, which is 500 stocks. But even that one has its kind of mechanical issues. And one of them is it is a market weighted index, meaning the larger the companies, the more influence it has over the direction of the index. So as these handful of giant companies have exploded over the last few years in terms of their dominance in the U.S. economy, their pervasiveness, and that's even, just kind of through a a trick of COVID. These things have all played to the strengths of these tech companies. If the problem with the U.S. economy right now is a massive internet outage that was because of some sort of cyber attack or something, these companies wouldn't be doing as well. But because it's something that has, so many of the people in the economy staying at home and ordering stuff online and watching Netflix and doing all these online things, it's only sped up the dynamics that made these companies so giant to begin with. So anyway, as these companies get bigger, they have a bigger and bigger influence on the stock market in general. And that's one of the reasons why, it seems so divorced from the everyday experience of people's lives.
So, okay, so it sounds like you're saying that the sort of success and outsized success of these few tech company stocks are driving the overall market higher. But there are other factors too, right? I mean, we keep getting the same question from our listeners, which is like, what is the deal with the Fed and all of this bond buying that seems to also be sort of shoring up, if not specific prices, at least confidence?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the other thing that's different about financial markets than like, a company that's listed on the public markets is a little bit different than the guy who runs the diner down the corner, because they're sort of exposed to these fluctuations of like monetary policy that like the guy slinging hot dogs isn't. But so for one thing, it's a little bit hard to explain why the Fed's efforts to support the economy and kind of pump money into financial markets should make stocks go up. There's one way that people explain it is basically when the Fed is doing this, basically they're creating a bunch of new money. They're using that money to buy basically government bonds. Bond prices and yields move in opposite directions. So when they buy bonds, it pushes the yields or interest rates lower. So, and basically what that does is it takes away a place. Sorry.
Right.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I want to jump in because it's not just government bonds, right?
Right.
It's corporate bonds.
Yes.
For the first time in Fed history.
Yes, that is true. But the overwhelming majority of what they're doing is buying, government bonds or government-backed mortgage bonds. So that's like trillions and trillions of dollars. They haven't bought as many corporate bonds, but that is a major new thing they're doing. So they're basically pumping. Sorry, Kai, you want to get in there?
Right. So what they're doing, they're driving the yields down, right? They're driving interest rates on bonds down, which makes it tough to make money in bonds, and stocks thus look attractive. So everybody's piling in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it basically takes away a profitable other place to trade and pushes people into riskier investments. Ideally, it pushes them to like go start a business, but barring that, it makes more sense to buy stocks. And part of this is just like conditioned behavior on the part of investors. Like, there's a reason why "don't fight the Fed" is like the basic rule of every trader in the stock markets, because it works. It doesn't, these guys aren't academics. They don't need to see the, peer-reviewed research. It works. It makes them money. And so when the Fed is printing, you better be buying or you're going to fall way behind. So it's a bit like a Pavlovian response and a behavioral thing, as much as there's any quote unquote sort of science or, hard economics behind it. It's just the Fed is printing money. You better get on board that train or your performance is going to look a lot worse than the people who you're competing against. So, that's as crude as it gets, but it's kind of it.
Can I go back to the corporate bond buying? Like, how big a deal is that? I mean, it is a new development for the Fed. It sounds like you're saying they haven't bought a lot, but is there some, moral hazard built in there or some confidence that creates? Like, how big a deal is that?
It was a big deal. It's weird. Like, we're now kind of past the point where that was such a big deal. But do you remember, like, back in March, we were talking about like Boeing having to file for bankruptcy. You know what I mean? Like, Boeing was going to have to get a multi-billion-dollar. I think there was talk of them getting $25 billion in direct assistance from the federal government. What the Fed did basically made it so that they didn't have to do that. Like, the Fed basically said, we stand ready to buy these corporate bonds. And that basically just the power of, jawboning the market made all the bonds rally, because all those prices went up because the Fed says, listen, we have the ability to create as much money as we need, and we stand ready to buy these things if the prices don't go in the directions we want. And so the prices went in the directions they want. That enabled a lot of those companies to refinance. And so like the bond market exploded in terms of activity, and basically every corporation that could has basically refinanced their debts for really low interest rates that the Fed is delivering right now. So it was a big deal, but it's sort of like a textbook case of how central banking can work well if you're credible. If you say, listen, we'll do this, the prices move without the Fed ever having to spend a dime, just because they own the printing press, and you don't want to fight that. Does that make any sense?
Deal then?
Right? Yeah,
it
totally.
makes a lot of sense,
yeah.
right? Makes a lot of sense. And especially when you compare, a couple of hundred, this is going to sound ridiculous, but a couple of $100 billion worth of authority to buy corporate bonds versus trillions and trillions of dollars. I mean, I don't even know how big the balance sheet is now, like $7 trillion in mostly government bonds and mortgage-backed securities. But you bring up something interesting, which is psychology, right? And just back to the stock market for a minute. Everybody wants in now because it's like going up, and hey, we got to get in before we miss out, right? There's a little bit of that.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I've been so astonished by, for years, at least since the financial crisis, the stock market had gone up, the bull market that ended when we first had this panic about coronavirus. But the bull market had pushed stocks up about 300% from 2009 through the, March or whatever. There had never been any real speculative frenzy in the market. I mean, there was pockets of it, like at times you would get, a few people really excited about gold, or a few people really excited about Tesla or Apple or whatever. But there was never like a broad-based public involvement in the markets. But we, through the lockdown, we really started to see that, which was remarkable. You had a lot of people. I wrote a story that, sports was canceled. So, and there's a lot of people in this country that gamble on sports. And with sports locked down, a lot of people got into the stock market and were just gambling and playing it, because it was like the last source of like nonstop action. So you got a little bit of that speculative frenzy happening, which I didn't see coming. I mean, who would have thought that stock trading would be during a quasi depression, everyone would want to bet on stocks. But, and I think to what we're talking about broadly, part of that reflects the behavioral, learning from the last 10 years, where every time the market felt like it was going to fall, the Fed would seem to kind of come in with some new program to keep the economy and by extension, the stock market going. And I think a lot of sort of armchair investors were like, I can play that game. I can see when the Fed cuts interest rates and buy stocks. And a lot of them have.
Right. I mean, you use the word learning there, and I wonder how much we are learning. Like, is it a good time for there to be a frenzy of stock buying? Like, there's certainly the argument. I saw this, somebody posted this on Reddit and basically said, as long as there's trillions of dollars on the sideline waiting to buy the dip, we don't really actually have to worry about there being a giant crash, because there's just not that many places for people to put their money, like you said.
Right.
But on the other hand, when something feels so counterintuitive and so disconnected from reality, like, is it just another form of wealth inequality and it's a bad sign?
Well, I think wealth inequality has a lot to do with this. I mean, the other thing that's, why we often kind of have this, and we have it too, where I work too, people are like, why is the stock market not reflecting the broad kind of feeling among the American middle class? It's not a good barometer of the American middle class. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the value of shares held by American households are held, by the richest 10% of the country, the wealthiest 10% of the country. So, I mean, that's not nobody. That's 30 million households, but 30 million people, I guess, in theory. But it's not like a broad-based gauge of how people are feeling. I mean, like we saw, we're at record highs, and then we just had this today. We just had a really sharp collapse in consumer confidence. 50% of the country owns basically zero in stocks. So this is completely irrelevant conversation for them. I mean, we're a more democratic stock market than most European countries. Germans don't own that many stocks. The French don't own that many stocks in individual households or 401k type things. But but it's, it is really, the vast majority of it is, something that is dominated by really wealthy households, and they're going to be less likely to feel, the economic downturn, and maybe they'll have more resources to buy when, if you're buying when everyone else is selling, it's because you have some extra money, and so you're more likely to get in there, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there are fewer people with extra money in this economy right now. Matt Phillips is a markets reporter at the New York Times. The stock market is not the economy, part 3,794. Matt, thanks a lot. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, Matt.
Thanks.
Take good
Take
care.
it easy.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. I mean,
it's
it's
kind of intense and sad. It's sort of like, oh, this is awful. I feel like the stock market is like, if you have to ask how much it costs, you can't afford it. Like,
yeah, kind of.
if you don't have enough money to be worried about it, then don't worry about prices still going up. Yeah.
But
I'm not gonna lie, that still doesn't feel
all
right.
So,
those were good answers
so
and real answers, but
yep. So there is a
have the moral
behavioral
hazard
economics piece
conversation.
of this to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole different thing, right? Because I mean, I know you like the whole they're buying corporate bonds and that's what's going on, but that's not really what's going on. But there is a behavioral economics part of this thing about why a rising stock market makes people who don't have money in the stock market feel better about the economy.
Oh yeah,
It's that whole
I
wealth
actually
effect thing,
weirdly,
right?
yeah, and in fact, I didn't ask it, but I've asked it of you and other people on the show. Like, it's also not the worst thing. Like, if these companies are doing well and have money, they're not laying people off. I mean, they haven't done a great job of, let's say, what is the word, trickling down some of that money. But it's better than the alternative, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
It's complicated, but yes, I think it is like increasingly what we're realizing is these are just not, it's not the same conversation. They don't even belong in the same, these are two people who don't belong in the same room, the stock market and the everyday economy.
Right.
Okay.
For sure.
Got it.
There you go. Boom.
There's still some
Took care of
moral
that
hazard. There is some. We're headed to a break.
All right.
Before we go, send us your comments. Whose side are you on with respect to moral hazard? What does the economy feel like to you?
Oh, snap.
I mean, I'm just saying it's a way to get some good email. It almost always is. And what does the economy feel like to you? And what changes have you experienced in your own life? And have you bought some Apple stock? Let us know. Send us an email or a voice memo. makemesmart@marketplace.org. And we will be right back.
All right, news. You know what struck me as I was flipping through the news the last, number of hours since I've been awake? There's like 4 stories right now, right? 4 stories on the entire planet. There is a technology story. There's the coronavirus story. There's American political pandemonium story. And then, depending on where you are, there's a regional story. For us, it's the forest fires. But that's it. In the entire world, there are 4 news stories right now.
I would say the forest fires are all part of one big global story, actually. Climate
Well,
change.
Yes. That's
So,
it.
yeah.
That's
Yep. That's actually really funny. I was just telling my man friend last night, I'm like, you got to get off Twitter because it makes you think that you personally are involved in 115 different subjects that are actually not your purview.
Yep.
Like, all you have to worry about, right, is getting your job done, schooling your kids,
Yep.
like trying to keep it, trying to keep it all together. But like, basically, I was like, keep your job, school your kids, don't let your house burn down. And then he brought up the asteroid.
Yeah.
And I was like, fair. You could add that.
Which is sadly not big enough.
the
It's not a
pile.
big enough asteroid. It's not a big enough asteroid.
That's like even worse, actually. Then it's just like, oh, God.
Could
Okay,
it
I
get
don't need to go down
everybody's
there.
hopes up?
Well, no, because then if it hits, it causes like massive, horrible damage, but it doesn't kill us all. Like, no, I either want instant death asteroid or no asteroid. Nothing in the middle.
Okay.
Can I put in my order for that? Yeah, I know.
Yes,
Damn
you
it.
may.
We were
Sweet
trying to
meteor
calm you
of
down.
death. Oh, man. Okay.
I can't believe you just told me it wasn't big enough.
It's not big. It's only like the
Damn
size of
it.
a car or something, right? Come on.
That's
It's going to
awful.
like break up
So
in the atmosphere.
tons of
I
damage,
know.
not instant death. Super. Great.
I know. Well, I just did it. Yeah. Anyway.
Now I'm really mad.
So, Back
what do
to
you
the
got?
news, shall we? What do you like?
Fine. I am into a story that combines both pandemic and what do you call it? The political chaos,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is that it's funny because I got a little fooled. We had some good news late last week, in the form of the Trump administration moving data collection back
Yeah.
to the CDC. It had, put data collection around testing and cases under the purview of the HHS, that was the Health and Human Services, which is a much more political organization, and it was in the hands of a private company that was refusing to be transparent about it, citing a non-disclosure agreement with the government, even though government contracts are based on transparency. So I was like, oh, good. They put the data collection back under the apolitical CDC. That is very important. And then unfortunately, at apparently the same moment, decided that the FDA was the place to bring back the politics. The administration blocked the U.S. Food and Drug Administration from regulating a whole bunch of lab tests, including tests for the coronavirus. And you know how I feel about testing. I saw this piece over the weekend on CNN about these paper strips, basically, like instant, super fast testing. You could potentially go to the CVS on the corner, buy a pack of these, like you would buy a pack of gum, and you could test yourself every day, every couple of days, and 80-85% accuracy, but at least it lets you potentially catch cases right at the moment that they're the most transmissible, and do contact tracing and isolation. And that is like a ticket to freedom. If you can just be like, I got on a plane to go see my mother in North Dakota, who I don't know when I'm going to see again. I don't know when I'm going to see her again. And if she gets sick, it could be never. That's the kind of stuff that we are talking about every day with a pandemic that we don't have under control. This kind of rapid testing, this is one way that could be under control. And instead, the FDA is apparently now apologizing today for grossly misstating the efficacy of plasma treatments with respect to COVID-19. But that's the stuff that they're being put on, right? They're being told to focus all of their attention on treatments that have yet been unproven. We know how much pressure they got about hydroxychloroquine, and they've had the authority for approving testing and diagnostics taken away from them. And we keep hearing that cases in this country are going down, but if you flip over to the next tab in the coronavirus tracker, you see that so is testing. And I just need us to be mad about this every day. Every day.
Every day.
Like, we could have all the things we want. We can have all the things we want. But this is not the way. That's what I got. That's my news fix for today.
We stopped trying. We stopped trying. Okay, mine are.
I think that's a little. Can I jump in there? I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
We didn't stop. I mean, yeah, we stopped trying, but now we're trying in ways that are actually. Like, there is action happening. There is activity happening. There's all these pushes happening. I don't know. What I'm confused about is why there is trying in all the directions that seem to be counterproductive.
I think large sections of the American public in areas where the virus is still a factor, like, for instance, 2 weeks ago when I was down in San Diego County, and masks were nowhere.
Yeah.
My family is extremely buttoned up, and we went down. We were going to go to the beach in Carlsbad. And as we're driving along the main drag there in front of the beach with all the shops and the stores, not 8% of the population had a mask on.
Yeah.
And they were clustered, going in and out of stores. And look, believe me when I tell you I get the economic argument. But there is no economic argument to be had if we don't figure out the virus. And walking around without a mask in large groups who aren't all your family pod, I'm sorry, is not the way to do it. That's what I mean by we've stopped trying.
Got it. Different
We the people. We
Yep.
the people.
We the people. Yes, fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agree. Yes, we agree.
Yeah, we do.
Okay,
we
your
do.
turn.
We do. But no, because it's all related. I was talking about layoffs with
related.
American Airlines and in Europe and all this jazz, but it's all related. It's all the same story, the virus. So really, there's one freaking story in the news right now. Just one. There's one story. It's this virus. That's it.
I mean, there really is, actually. Even the political pandemonium is so much about the virus.
Yeah.
Like, it would be some pandemonium no matter what.
Yep.
But yeah.
All right, Charlton, hit the mailbag music, would you? Let's move on, shall we?
Hi, Kai and Molly.
This is Brent from Detroit.
This is Rebecca from Baltimore.
It was great to hear comments on my question about GDPR.
I wanted to put in my vote.
I want to discuss a slightly different but maybe related thing.
All right, so here we go. Last Thursday, Hollowed Out Shell Thursday, as a reminder, which is a day after tomorrow, I brought up the story from Syracuse University where a group of freshmen had gathered on the quad in the first weeks of school, maybe in the first week, to have a celebration of, yay, we are at college and let's have a good time. Violation of school policy, and the vice chancellor had released a strongly worded statement to the community about how those students had jeopardized in-person learning for the entire campus. And I said, in essence, gosh, what a surprise, college freshmen do something stupid. A lot of you thought I was stupid, including, well, maybe he didn't think I was stupid. He thought I was wrong. Michael Jordan wrote, and here's what he says. I disagree with your criticism of the Syracuse University Vice Chancellor. I am currently a freshman at Baylor University, which has reopened for in-person classes. I take issue with the idea that blame for the misbehavior of freshmen should fall on the university staff. Your reasoning seemed to be that freshmen will be freshmen and we cannot expect them to do anything to curb their behavior. That is incorrect, he says. These are individuals who have the right to vote, the right to make their own life decisions, and more importantly, the right to pay attention to pay to attend a university and be subject to the rules thereof. Freshmen and all college students are adults who at least theoretically made the informed choice to enter into a residential agreement knowing that they would be expected to take precautions for their health and the health of others. Yes, absolutely, I totally agree. I also would like them to buy me a beer. They're not actually adults. Right? Right?
That was smooth. That was a real slow burn on my part.
I get what he's saying, and I completely understand that. And
Sure.
one would hope,
And kudos to him.
that 18-year-olds in this society, yeah, for sure. And look, yelling at me in an email as a college freshman is a good thing to do. I agree with all of what he says, but I also think I have a point. That's it.
Look, this email, and we got several of these, and some, people were like, that's really unfair. Colleges are in this tough spot and they need this money. And hey, man, I get all of that. But this is much like the virus at large, is a question of leadership. If you put people in a position if you make it way easier for them to make a dumb decision, if you take the seatbelts out of their car, if you take the ABS brakes out of their car, right? Like, you put them in a position of increased danger.
Yeah. Also, if I could just
And there are
call
plenty
us
of
back
adults
to
walking around with no masks on.
yeah, for sure. Adults are idiots too, right?
Yeah.
Let's call back to Scott Galloway in the interview we did, in which he basically said, look, these colleges are going to have to back it down. Let's be serious. They're just waiting until the freaking payment deadline passes, and then they're going to say, oh, no, sorry, you can't do it anymore. And there's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
You know.
And I
But look,
I absolutely
Michael, I appreciate your
understand
note. Yep.
that they're in a tough
For sure.
position. They are, like, these schools,
For sure.
we're just building on all of the broken systems that we have around us. But this is one that is putting young people in danger. And in some cases, even Nate Silver, noted buzzkill of our more emotional theories, tweeted and said that what some of these schools are doing is pretty close to a bait and switch.
Yep.
All right, on to your voicemail. More topics. Last week, Kai and I asked you to tell us, I love this, what you think isn't screwed up in the pandemic. And we want to play a response that fits nicely into this pandemic silver linings category. Here's listener Carl Nicholas.
Hi, Kai and Molly. This is Carl Nicholas from Simi Valley, California. There are some benefits from this pandemic. Number one, my bride of 44 years and I are in better health. We don't eat out as much, we walk twice a day, and we still enjoy being with each other. Number two, my garden is doing better. It looks more beautiful because I'm spending more time there. Number three, Even though our 5 children are spread across the U.S. with our 15 grandchildren, we spend more time with them. They share all of the fun new things that they do. We feel closer together as a family. Number 4, my wife teaches piano lessons via Zoom. She finds her students concentrate more and that they're practicing more during the pandemic and becoming better piano players. So while the pandemic is horrible, there are some benefits, and we are enjoying these benefits while hoping it soon ends.
Did
Yeah,
you
that's
hear
great.
the piano in the background?
That's lovely. I did hear the piano in the background. That's so funny. I thought it was just me. And I was like, am I hallucinating? What is that?
We got let's like speed
That's
round.
good.
We got some more of these because this is
Yeah.
also true. Like this is exactly on the idea of like you don't actually have that many things to worry about because Susan Sharp is not alone in saying like my savings account. It's funny. My ex-in-laws were telling me the other day. My former mother-in-law was like, I can't figure out how to spend money. Bless her.
Yeah.
She's like kind of confused
Totally.
about it. So Susan wrote in and said, since March, my family's paid off $25,000 in debt. We've given $2,500 to charity and we put $11,000 in savings. Granted, this comes at a price, that price being daycare, learning environments, and family vacations, including Disney. But the only debt right now is the mortgage. And
Which is great.
Susan says we have emergency funds now that will cover 6 months of expenses.
Here's another one. Chris Bonatti. He says, I can honestly tell you that I am more involved with my son's life since this whole mess started. And for that, I feel a little grateful to have the employment I do that allows me to have this life during this troubling time. So, yeah, there's
And
some
finally,
goods out there.
Phoebe Woodworth Jeff Coates, PhD, writes, Nature. I actually love this. I almost made this and make me smile. Scientists have reported being able to make better seismographic observations because there's less human noise. And apparently they were literally able to measure the drop in just like overall human sound and all these animals creeping out being like, this is great. So yeah. Loved it.
Really good.
Loved it.
Okay, so Make Me Smart question this week comes from Dan Habib. He's a documentary filmmaker. His work focuses on people living with disabilities. Here he is.
Hey, this is Dan Habib. I'm a documentary filmmaker based in Concord, New Hampshire. 20 years marks the time frame in which I've been a dad to my son Samuel. And Samuel has a pretty complex disability. He has a rare genetic disorder that has resulted in him using a wheelchair and a communication device. And my wife and I were understandably, really grieving this reality that he had a significant disability. And when he was just a few years old, I met this amazing activist named Norman Kuntz, who has cerebral palsy. And he said, if you could give me a pill to take away my cerebral palsy, I wouldn't take it. I like who I am. I like my disability, and I don't want to lose it. And that was this huge moment of, maybe we don't need to cure, quote unquote, Samuel's disability. Maybe he will be just fine having a disability as he gets older. So I'm just learning all the time from the people that I get to work with and interact with about how little I really know about what it's like to live with disability.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's kind of profound.
Yeah.
Apologies for the lawnmower in the background, by the way. I have no control. Yeah.
Didn't
Yeah,
even
it's
hear it.
kinda wild.
That's
Okay,
wonderful. That's wonderful, Dan. Thank you for that. The question, once again, is what is something you thought you knew and you later found out you were wrong about? Please keep those answers coming. We absolutely, as you can see, we love them. Best part of the show is you guys. Email, makemesmart@marketplace.org. Subject line, questions for tomorrow, or make me smart answer, if that's what you're sending. And we will try to answer more of your big questions. Hopefully you feel like we answered this big stock market one today. I do. Thank goodness. Sort of.
Yeah.
All right. See you tomorrow.
Make Me Smart is produced and directed by Sam Anderson. Tony Wagner is our digital producer. Ben Heathcote does video with Ethan helping him out. Ethan Parrott's our video intern. Eric Phillips writes our newsletters, also does those skills that you hear me and Molly say on the smart speakers.
Ethan Parrots is like our utility infielder. He does it
I
all.
know, right?
Today's program was engineered by Charlton Thorpe and mixed by Garrett Lang. Our theme music was composed by Ben Tolliday and Daniel Ramirez. The senior producer, and she's crushing it, is Bridget Bodner. And the executive director of On Demand, she of the great flowy hair in our Zoom meetings, is Satara Nieves.
It looked like a music video, man.
She had a Beyonce fan going today in our morning meeting. It was amazing.
That's right.
Amazing.
We should put a still up on the page. saying. Just saying.
She'd just be like, nope, nope, no,
know.
nope.
I know.